So it's been a while since I worked on the Mark II, so I've uncovered it, tried to have a little bit of a sort out of inside the car and just get some panels and stuff tidied away. I've managed to tidy around the bottom of the car because this was a right mess earlier, so I actually got somewhere to work. I've got the jack up there on the chassis rail, just behind the jacking point, or the original jacking point. They call it, well, for what I'm trying to do, they call it the fulcrum point, I think. What issue I've got is the you can't see it right now, but the door gap between where the door here shuts, here and here, the door nearly touches, which causes a problem with this door catch as well. I'll excuse the focus on that, it's not working very well. It's probably because of the light. Yeah, this door catch pretty much has to be right up, so the holes are pretty much exposed where these screws go through, which I don't think it should be like that from the factory. I've read the book, apparently it's a common fault. When I bought the car, just so you know, none of this, I've probably said in the last video, none of that existed. So there was barely any strength. I guess you call it, what's the right word, the A pillar or whatever you call it, this pillar here. There wasn't a great deal going on, and pretty much all of this floor that I've taken out was non-existent. This inner sill, as you can see, the inner sills, I've had to replace that as well. I'm sorry about the light, it's not particularly good at the minute. I need to get this sill in, get the jacking points in. You can just about, sorry about the light again, you can just about see the jacking point in there. It's not welded, it's just placed there, so I can get the measurements right. As you can see, the inner sill is in, I've said before. So we just have to see how we get on. So that's where we're at the moment, and we'll try and get this floor welded up. Okay, so we're doing some work on the Jaguar. It's been quite a long time since I've done any work on it at all, although this video is probably slightly out of sequence because I did actually start working again on it last night. What we're doing, or what I'm struggling with at the minute, last night obviously excuse the welding, obviously it'll look better once it's ground down. Has got good penetration, it just looks a bit untidy. Got this bit of the floor wasn't welded in, so now it's welded in, and what I was hoping for, and what has happened, although I've since moved the door pillar to try and get the sill in because it's obviously not attached, is we did start getting a good line on the door shut, with the jack jacked up just past the jacking point on the chassis rail. So that obviously lifted the car up, because at the moment the car is kind of doing this thing where the front is pointing up, and if the front end's pointing up and this side is pointing down, because as I said in the previous video, when I bought the car there was absolutely nothing here at all, no real strength. So I took some photographs when I actually bought the car before I started cutting it apart, of what sort of gaps I had, and these you could pretty much not even get a cigarette paper through. They were really close, and they obviously, the more I cut out of the car, the slightly worse it got, hence why I started putting this brace in, just to help hold the body straight, which is what the kind of Practical Classics book of restoring these advises you to do before you start really cutting any big pieces out, which I did. So we got that line a little better. It seems the more and more I weld in, and obviously every time before I weld anything in, I jack the front of the car up in that same place, just to make on the fulcrum point, to make the door gap open up, to get the door into the right position on the catch. There is movement in the catch, but I know that's roughly obviously where it should be. The more I do with it jacked up like that, and obviously the more I weld in, since welding that in yesterday, and then letting the pressure off the jack, the door gap at the top and bottom has started to improve, and it's no longer pinching at the top of the door, so it's getting better. Hopefully what I'm trying to do now is, sorry, I'm a bit short for space, so it's not easy to get in here. I'm actually trying to get the sill panel positioned. I'm not welding it in yet because there's a bit of fettling to do with it. It is a pattern panel. It does fit okay, but there's obviously stuff that needs a little bit of adjustment, and there's things I've done which probably aren't slightly, you know, right, and need a little bit of a tweaking here and there. I didn't have this panel when I did the repairs up the front there, so I think there may be a little bit of tweaking need to be done on what I've done, or at least on the new panel anyway, because it's catching on the bottom of this edge here where the white sticker is underneath, but that doesn't seem to really matter because I think that's underneath the wing repair panel anyway once that's closed in, so no one's going to see it. So I've got some just cleaning up to do on these welds, adjustment on the sill this end to get it to fit, clean these welds up in here, and then make this sill hopefully fit a lot better so we can get it welded in. And like I say, I'll jack the body in the right place at the front, which is basically under there. I'll give a demonstration in a moment, and you'll see what it does. Right, so we can see now the door gap. As you can see, it gets progressively bigger as you get to the bottom, and then it gets smaller as you get to the top. Now, like I said before, when I actually had the car, when I first got the car, you can see there's a gap. Now there wasn't before. You could barely, like I said, probably get a cigarette paper between the two, so this is good. Also, how the door is shutting now, I can pretty much push it closed, although it is still catching the catch. And I know the catch is pretty much in the right position, because any further up or down it starts to expose the holes in the panel. Now I'm sure Jaguar wouldn't have intended it to be that way, and I'm sure with the mark that's been left there, it's pretty much where it was before, or it was intended to be. So again, I apologise, I can't really use a tripod for this because I'm going to need to move you around a little bit, but there's the jack in position on the chassis rail, and this is the old jacking point there. So as you can see, I've had to drop the sill out again just to get the door pillar in the right position so it behaves as if it would. So you can see the gap, and as I jack the car, it might take a moment. And it's probably easier for me to see than it is for you, but you can see the gap start to change. Just taking the load off the car, or off the axle stands there. So now you can see the door gap is even. Okay, and now I think, I may be wrong, and this is where you can all laugh at me because I get it wrong, the door should open and close. See, I can't get back far enough because I'm enough room. Okay, so it is a known problem, reading in the book, and this is the way you have to get around it. The only thing is, when you do how I'm doing it, is before I do get the last welding in, like I said to you, by just welding in the floor. So by welding the floor yesterday and having it jacked in that position, I regained the gap at the top of the door, and the gap is getting better and better. So what we have to do is, before welding in the final part, or the final sill panel, which is there on the floor, okay, I'll probably have to jack this, and what I'll probably do is jack it so that I take it slightly beyond, you know, it's actually opened this up a little bit more than it should be, so it gives me just a little bit of spring back, and then hopefully when I weld in the front of the sill, sorry about my phone, I don't know why it's not focusing. Right, just had to stop the video there and start again. For some reason the camera wouldn't focus. So as you can see, the door gap now is pretty much even all the way down. Now I know this to be, this part of the wing to be right, because this has never been removed. This is still the original panel. The door is the original panel, apart from I think it's had some repairs, but I don't think anyone's actually cut this door apart fully by the looks of what I can see inside. So I know this is right. So like I said to you before, what I'm learning as I do this, because I've never ever done one, it says to keep a measure or an eye on your door gaps. Now I've made marks, took measurements as best I can everywhere. I've got them written down somewhere, but I've also got photographic evidence too. So whenever you're doing anything, we always put little marks to suggest where obviously the end of that goes. Again, as you can see, I've had to remake these because they didn't exist. They do need a little bit of fettling. They're not quite right. I need a bit more cutting off of them. But I'm not a sheet metal worker, so you know, I'll just do my best I can. As you can see, you probably can't see very well, these doors have actually never been cut. There's no bottom repairs or anything, so they are original. So another issue I've got, another job that needs doing. First of all, I've obviously grind all these little welds down and stuff. I did try, obviously you can see that I've sort of repaired it, but managed to save the corner piece of this bottom of the A post here. What I am getting is the base of the door pretty much touches the curve there. You can just see with the two drill holes in it, they're about 1 inch or so apart. The base of the door basically touches that. I'll try and point to it. It touches here. That's it. Oh, I've got my fingers in it. It touches on here. So because the door needs to be repaired, it needs the bottom taking off of it. When I put the bottom back on again and put the new skin on, I'll just raise the door about maybe 2 or 3 millimeters inside. It's not going to make a difference. It's not going to be noticeable, but at least it will stop it from touching. Obviously something's moved somewhere. This car has, you know, been apart before. It wasn't exactly straight when I got it. There was a lot of, as you know, rust and all sorts in it. So it's had a pretty hard life. It may have even been driven rough around the farm that it was on before it got condemned to the barn. I don't know. But yeah, there's going to be a little bit of movement when you cut things apart, but it's, like I say, it's just better to take note of where things come from, how much you're cutting out, what your door gaps are like, and what the book says. And like I said, especially before you start cutting anything out, you do need to make a brace like that. That pretty much goes to the back of the, where the seat back is. That's right up against the rear bulkhead and all the way up to the front one. And then I've just basically cut a block to sort of match the angle and kind of made up this thing. I guess you could use an acro prop or something like that, but I sort of made that so it was a bit more adjustable. And then take measurements, lots of them. Right, so after a bit of wrestling with it, it's kind of in, not welded obviously, just temporary fitted, just trying to find what it wants to do, how it wants to sit. What I have found is, I thought it was anyway, but this panel is curved. It curves like that, like a banana. Now I can't remember when I cut the old sill out how it lined up with the top of the outside sill lined up with the top of the inner. I can't remember, but it's when they've made it, obviously it's curved here, but it's also curved on here as well. But the inner sill panel is straight, it's just straight along. So there seems to be like a slight, the panel doesn't quite overlap. If I can show it to you, I probably can't because there's not a lot of light. Hang on a minute. Yeah, you can probably see there, you get a little bit of, you can see the inner sill just poking out there, and you can sort of see it there as well a little bit. So it's just how it wants to sit at the minute. So I've still got the jack underneath, just to aid aligning the door up and just trying to see what the shut lines are like at this point, obviously before I start welding anything up. So we'll just have a quick look at that. Right, so after just a little bit more tweaking, what I am happy with is the fact is that if you look along the door edge, I've obviously, like I said, I've got the jack at the moment keeping the door gap right, by being jacked on that, what they call the fulcrum point there. But what I do like is the fact is that when you look along the sill, the door line is relatively straight. It's not sagging in the middle or anything like that. The only thing I do have a bit of an issue is I did cut a bit of material out here because it wasn't allowing the panel to go in far enough and sort of like line up properly with the edge of the inner sill. But I think I want to try and get away from that. I may have to like put this back as it was and weld it back to push the sill out this end, because it's not easy to see, but because the camera the stick's in the way. But you can see this door does bow out a little bit anyway, but it's not quite lining up. So I think essentially this panel just needs to kind of shift out like that, because the door should line up. They should line up together, and it's not. So I'm going to have to basically just tweak the sill a little bit. So, and probably instead of it being spot welded along the top edge of the door, I may have to tack it, because it needs to kind of just come this way, so it will reveal the if I show you what I'm trying to say instead of trying to explain it, it will reveal you can just see there so I apologise for the lighting, it's quite bad in here, but you can see the inner sill underneath the outer sill. And I think that when I took it apart, I may have got the inner sill in slightly the wrong position, or it was like it, I don't remember, but I think the outer sill used to completely cover the lip of the inner sill. So it may be that I'll have to stitch it, or you know, or spot weld it as best as possible. But I'm not worried so much about that as long as it's strong, because you can't see it, but you will see if the sill's been, you know, obviously badly fitted and the doors don't line up properly. So I'd rather, you know, worry about what I can see and not what I can't see, kind of thing. But as long as it's obviously solid repairs. But I'm really happy with that line, although I've never done one of these before. I know sometimes it can be quite awkward to get the lines right, and obviously once you weld it up, and that's it. So there's going to be a lot of probably faffing around trying to get this right. I will have to hang the rear door again and make sure. So I will have to hang the rear door again to check the lines on this, and I'll probably put the D panel, tack it in temporarily, and then put the I can't get back far enough away from the car because I don't have the room to get the spat panel back on as well, to make sure that lines up properly too before I start welding anything up permanently, because like I say, once you welded it, you've welded it and that's it. But I'm really happy with it so far. You know, I haven't touched this car for a while. There is you can see that door gap is actually wrong there because the pillar's not quite in the right place. This pillar actually needs to go backwards at the bottom. It's not quite right, but this gap originally was quite big on this car before I even took it apart. I've taken photographs and measurements, so this was actually like this. But I'm really, I'm getting happier with this, because this is like the crucial gap. I know the jack is holding it now, but when I take the jack away, it's not closing up fully at the top anymore. So hopefully when I get the sill ready to weld in, once that's welded in this end and this point here, then hopefully that'll hold it somewhere near. I don't think it'll ever be perfect, but it'll be as good as I can get it. And I don't think the line looks too bad across the other end either. I think it looks pretty, nothing looks too out of place. When you kind of like hold the camera there, you can just see the top of the door pillar there. I think is slightly off, but nothing really sticks out or looks too unpleasant. So hopefully there we go. I'm sure all the experts out there will be absolutely going, no, don't do it like that, what are you doing? But like, I'm a guy in a garage, so I've got to use what I've got. So if it's like bits of steel and bits of wood and constantly checking and rechecking before welding stuff up, is the best I can do. I don't have all the luxury of a big jig and things like that. I've just got to keep things as straight as I can and just do the best I can. But there we go. Anyway, so yeah, this is an update. And again, I think someone possibly, I think maybe John, I think a guy called John possibly had asked me how I was doing at least a year ago, and I didn't reply. I do apologise. I just haven't really been doing a lot with the YouTube videos and such like. As you can see, I've got the other Land Rover out there to do. I've also got the Westminster as well, which is ongoing, because the idea is to get this one so it can be moved and it's structurally sound along this side, and then get the Westminster back here and carry on with that for a bit. And I'm just enjoying what I'm doing. You know, I'm learning about how, you know, a bit about sheet metal and how probably not to weld things up. Yeah, so I'm just going to carry on the best I can when I get time to do it. So that's an update of the Jaguar so far anyway. So hopefully next time, you know, the next couple of weeks or so, if I'm going to get more time, we'll try and get this welded in. I hope you enjoy the videos. Anyway, I'm not doing it for any sort of, like, you know, YouTube, you know, gratification or whatever, or money. I'm just doing it as like a, you know, a diary really. And if what I do is any use to anyone, then hopefully it helps someone out. Because like anyone else, I'm just learning. You know, I've never done one of these before. So there we go. But hopefully I'll get a bit more space in here and maybe be able to set up a tripod so it's a little bit better. It's just not feasible at this moment. Right, well, thanks for watching. See ya. Bye.